if we want to understand what a scientific study is, we have to again go past and see how we examined nature. In the ancient past, material knowledge and spirituality went hand in hand. In fact, all knowledge was a synthesis of these two. Where and when did the separation happen between the material, between the matter and the spirit? If you look at medical knowledge, it was a synthesis of matter and spirit. Matter was studied and understood through this loaded concept called spirit. But over time, this led to a lot of speculation. Numerous doctrines and theories came into being. Lineages were established. In the West, Aristotle's theories dominated philosophy. In medicine, Hippocrates and Galen's theories dominated medical textbooks. In fact, medical textbooks were frequently returned in terms pertaining to the union of soul and flesh, spirit and matter. The word God was used very frequently in medical textbooks at the time. The philosophies of Aristotle, Plato were very prominent in medical textbooks. But after a while, certain elements of these religious establishments started to control the study of every aspect of matter and every aspect of study of nature. Doctrines became rigid, and the study of human biology was stalled, and there was no advancement in medicine. For instance, dissections and experiments were prohibited in the name of religion. All knowledge was controlled by the precepts of what religions preached. The spirit side was dominating the study of matter. But this went on for several centuries. Up until the 17th century, all the work that was done was the work of the great masters like Aristotle, Plato, Hippocrates, Galen, and the knowledge passed on by generations of sincere followers of this past wisdom. So there was no newness, there was no innovation. But in the 17th century, few individuals found this approach was not working to understand nature and our bodily functions. So they had to separate spirit from the matter. Matter had to be studied using quantifiable evidence. Human body was starting to be seen as a collection of mechanisms which can be studied using chemical reactions, physical laws, and mathematical equations. If you look at the word mechanism, it is derived from machines. So the human body was starting to be looked upon more of a machine, where a healthy body is like a well-oiled machine. A diseased body has problems within the machine, within the machinery of the bodily functions. If you also look at how we define parts of our body, as if it is parts of a machine, we don't call them features of our body. We start to call them parts of the body, as if we are a machine and what we have are parts of this one sophisticated machine. So this working of this astonishing machine was studied using the chemical reactions, physical laws, and mathematical equations. Whereas spirituality and philosophy was concerned with the subjective experience and therefore cannot be quantified. Spirit and matter, therefore, could not go hand in hand in the study of nature. This separation happened when we started seeing human body and nature as a collection of mechanisms that can be studied using quantifiable experiments. And the guy who was responsible, single-handedly changing this perception, responsible for the separation of the spirit from matter, if one could attribute to one individual, it would be Francis Bacon. Old methods should die. Francis Bacon said, he was attributed, he was the one who many attribute as the founder of the scientific approach. He proposed new methods for a new beginning. He painfully and patiently listed unsolved problems in every field of human endeavor. He thus became the prophet of this new institution called science. Francis Bacon actually called this as a new philosophy, not as science. The word science was not introduced at the time. He called it new philosophy because it was different from any other philosophy at the time. The newness about this is that it aimed at practice rather than theory. It aimed at search for proof rather than doctrines. It aimed for something concrete rather than speculations. All knowledge, according to Bacon, is not an opinion, but a work that has to be verified. Knowledge should have utility and power, Bacon declared. Here, we can see for the first time there was a voice in the tone of modern science. The scientific method slowly emerged as a universal equalizer for all those who wanted to study nature. One peculiar attribute about this new method, which is the scientific method, is its process of investigation. The celebrated physicist Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize winning physicist, candidly articulated how an experimental method works. This is how he explained it. Suppose if your experiments prove your theory to be true, it does not mean that your guess is absolutely right. It simply is not proved wrong. Because in future there may be a wider range of experiments and a wider range of computations that may prove your theory is wrong. In other words, you can never prove a theory to be right. And this Feynman's assessment of the scientific approach remains true. Today, a typical scientific discovery relies on three factors. First is we formulate a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an intelligent guess. A hypothesis literally translates to suppose. And using this hypothesis, we put this to test. And it is tested in reputable controlled experiments and analyzed using mathematical calculations and statistics. And the third part of this process is publication of the results, which is as important as the others, because unless you publish it in a reputable or a peer-reviewed journal, it is not going to be passed on to those interested in your field of study. So anyone who correctly follows the steps laid down in a particular study design, for example, no matter who they are, they must be able to say, yes, I got the same result. I followed these steps, I got the same result. Since then, every claim we made had to be put to test. This scientific method changed our very perception of how we act, our habits, our social structure. For instance, if we claim that brushing our teeth twice a day, let us say once in the morning and once before bedtime, is better for the health of our teeth, this claim should be put to test. This is a hypothesis, and this hypothesis is to be put to test. Only if it passes the grind of the scientific study is it deemed appropriate to follow. The practice being brushing twice a day. If our test fails, the habit would be simply discarded. In this world of science, there is no room for existential questions such as why have we come into this world? What is the nature of the self? What is the goal of our life? What is the basis of ethics and morality? These existential questions cannot be quantified and therefore cannot be tested. Same applies to concepts such as the spirit and God and soul and so on. The words, therefore, the words spirit or God were never to be written in any respectable scientific journal. And if we look at how the founders of the scientific method started this process, the one person that comes to mind is Isaac Newton. The birth of what we call classic mechanics is attributed to Isaac Newton. According to him, nature behaves according to certain predetermined laws, and by discovering these laws, we can understand nature and its function. In his study, there was no place for spirit or soul or God, all the things that we attribute to the source of creation. In other words, there are laws in nature, but the lawmaker is not necessary for these laws to function. This was the premise upon which scientific approach was based upon. This was the birth of skeptics. The word skeptic became synonymous with scientific method. The founders of scientific method in the 16th and the 17th century felt that the universe is similar to a clock-like machine, independent of a lawmaker. And the scientific community loved this idea, not because that they truly believed in this assumption, but because only through such assumption we were able to let go of ourselves of the iron fist of religion that was choking the study of nature. And also they realized that the existence of a lawmaker, the creator, the spirit, the soul, the God, all these names, this is not a testable hypothesis. And so anything that is not a testable hypothesis has no role in the study of science. And so this was reluctantly omitted from all scientific endeavors. The best part of this approach is that it worked. We discovered many mechanisms of nature. We invented many instruments that makes our life comfortable. And for the past 3 centuries, scientists believe that the laws of nature are absolute, and by discovering them, we can understand nature and its functions. This honeymoon period went on for over, roughly over 2 centuries. And after a while, scientists started to discover that these laws of nature are not so absolute as was originally theorized by Newton and his contemporaries. Scientists discovered that what we can perceive about the universe is grossly limited by our perceptual capacities. The forces of universe that is not yet reachable to human mind has thus come to be known as the dark energy, the unknown force that is not reachable to the scientific study. Instead of calling it God or some exalted terms such as universal spirit or universal energy, they called it the dark energy. And because they did not want to give this unknown force of nature an exalted position and then get into the realm of spirit and soul and doctrines once again. So they have been very careful this time around. Many scientifically educated modern day gurus, however, tries to rationalize and synthesize these two approaches, the science of matter, the knowledge of spirit, into one whole, and try to bring back the matter and spirit together into a unified concept. Maybe we will at some point reconcile the difference between matter and spirit, but in all honesty, I feel that merging these two is not a feasible option, and it is not feasible to synthesize these two into one process. This is because Science as a branch of studying nature was created to get rid of these subjective theories from our studies. And if we try to bring it back into the study of nature, then we are going to see a clash of objectivity versus subjectivity. Science and spirituality are two separate approaches to understanding our nature, to understand ourselves, and trying to converge them into one unified concept will lead to confusion.